Hello everyone. In this lecture, we are going to talk about text file. This is kind of continue of the previous lecture. In previous lecture, we talked about CSV file. We read CSV file. We manipulated the data set and we wrote the data set back. So now, what if we have a text file? To read the text file, we are going to use a built-in function open. When we use open built-in function, the text file that we are going to use has a specific format. The format is IO wrapper, text IO wrapper. The previous video, when we worked with CSV file, the format of file was CSV and the file was read as a data frame file in Python, which is a kind of most convenient format to work with when we are doing our data analysis. Data frame for me is, I think it's the most convenient way of reading and manipulating data, analyzing data. Now we are going to learn about text IO wrapper and using text file open built-in function to read a text file. Okay, so this is a default file object retained by open. Open, as I said, is a built-in function in Python. Okay, so now you should be familiar with what I'm trying to define here. I'm defining a path. I have a text file which has the extension .txt, right? And I'm going to create a variable text IO wrapper. You can name it anything. I'm just writing this down because you remember the format of this file is different. And then this will be the way we open a file, text file. So when I try to print open, you see what I see here? These are something which is not similar to what I did in previous video. First of all, we should do some other processes to be able to read the file after we open it. So when we open a text file, we must do some other things. The most important thing is closing the text file, because if you leave it open like that and if you don't close it after opening the file, you may do accidentally, you may do some changes on the file and the file, the original file, will be cropped. So this is the way we try to close a file. So this is really inconvenient, right? So there are some other way to open a text file without being forced to close it later using close function. This will close a text file after opening it. So easier way is to use with. What with does? So before that, let's go through some specific kind of argument. There are some argument to open file. One is mode. This argument is a string that contains multiple characters to represent how you want to open the file. The default and most common one is R like this. This one says opening the file and read it only read. Okay, so another kind of character that mode argument has is W. W says open this file for writing. Open for writing. And truncating, overwriting the first file, the first text file or original text file. Okay, and then the next one is RB or WB, which is opening in a binary mode, read and write using byte data. And buffered binary file types with RB and WB, unless you use buffering equal 0, then it becomes raw file type. So the file type, after you choose these two arguments, the file type will be buffering binary file type. Unless what you do, unless you use buffering equals 0, then you are going to change the type to raw data type. Okay, so there are all the mode that I was talking about. Mode argument. Mode argument will have multiple characters like R, W, RB, and WB, and we can use each of them, depends on our need. So now when you open a file, you should be able to read it, right? How we read the file? There are 3 different methods to read the file. There are multiple methods actually that can be called on a file object to help you out. One is the .read size -1. What it does, this reads from the file based on the number of size byte, and then if no argument is passed or none is passed, then the entire file is read. It will read the whole file. We are going to use this. I will show you step by step. Another one is read line. Read line will read at most size number character from the line. This continues to the end of the line and then wraps back around, and if no argument is passed or none is passed, then or -1 is passed, then entire line is going to be read. And then the other one is read lines. What read lines does, so look, this one doesn't have S, this one has S. It reads the remaining lines from the file object and returns them as a list. Okay. So these are all the arguments that you should be familiar with, and we are going to use that. Okay, if you use open, you must close it using close function, right? Otherwise you will lose some information or change the file accidentally. I explained that. And then instead of closing file, we can use some other thing. What is that? We are going to use with open as our file name. Okay, I'm going to create a new cell. I'm going to paste here. I'm going to write down with, which is a reserved word, open path. Now I'm going to use R, W, RB, whatever I was talking about. Let's just read it only. As our file name, let's name it text file colon. Don't forget this, because here we are going to continue. Now print our text file dot read. So what I did, I used this one that I explained here without any size, because by default it's going to read the entire file, right? And then this is my text file's name, and then I'm reading as the text file name, and then I used R, which is reading the entire file read only, in read only mode. Okay, let's see what happens. This is the data set that we just opened and read, and this is the txt extension, which is a text file extension, which is more complicated, more difficult than CSV file. That's why we have to go through all of this. So if I use with, I don't need to use close. Okay, so the next one I'm going to show you is the type of text file. So we can use that, right? Type and then name of the text file that I just defined. Then look, text IO wrapper, the one I explained before. Okay, so now let's use the other argument like read line method, like read lines and what I was explaining. Okay, so now I'm going to again define a path, and then I'm going to use with open as text file. Then in continue of this, I'm going to print text file dot read line without s, and then I'm going to read 5 byte, and then I'm going to again read another 5 byte, doing the same thing. It's funny because if you try different numbers, you will get other results. And then please don't forget, with one tab you are going to indent it more, otherwise you will receive error. If the print is like this, if the print is like this, you are going to receive error. It should be indented, one whole tab. You are going to use the tab. Look, from the beginning I'm choosing tab on my keyboard, and then it's going to indent it for me. Okay, see what it's reading. It's just reading 5 byte, 5 byte, and then here let's read 6 byte. Let's read 1 byte. Then look what happened. 5, 6, 1. Do you see that? It will read the byte. Read 5 bytes. Reads 6 bytes. Okay, so this is using a read line. And then the other one that we can try is read lines. The similar thing with S. So what this one does, look, it will read all our data in this way. If you go back, you can read what read lines does, what read line does, each of them. It will return them as a list. As you see, these are all after each other. And then look at this, /n/t. In this one, we already saw that this is a space in print function. It returns tab. This one returns to another line, /n, right? So, okay, this is very messy. So how we can read it in a very organized and clean way? Okay, I'm going to again paste the path here. Now I'm going to open the path or file with this reserved word, and then I'm going to define a line here, and then I'm going to write down text file, which is the name that I explained here, defined here. I'm going to use read line, then without s, remember, without s, and then I'm going to write down while, oops, what I did, capital letter. Don't use capital letter for while. I'm briefly talking about while here, and then later we are going to explain that more and more and more. While line is not, so this one is equal. This symbol front of equal makes it is not. Is not. is not what? Is not empty. What this means empty, right? It says, while each line is not empty, continue. Print each line until you reach the end point, and then now read a new line, text file dot read line. This is going to repeat reading a line. Well, this is the name I chose, right? You can choose anything else. You can choose line with capital L. These green one are something already defined, and they are defined or reserved word in Python. While says do this action until you reach the end point, until you don't reach this expression here. So while line is not this, print it and read the next line, right? Okay, so this is the explanation of end of line. Character is empty string, and then the next one says print until there is no space, until the end of line, and the next one is going to read it. Okay, loop over this loop over these lines in our data set until you reach the last line, right? And then again pay attention to indenting. So what happened here, when I wrote down with, I had one indenting, I wrote down line, and then same place as line is, I wrote down while, and then now because print is under while loop, I'm going to indent print and line here. You don't have to indent the comment, but just to make it more nice. Okay, so what I did here, I did what I lost, this one. This is the key point here. So when you write down the while function, while loop, you must have a colon here, otherwise you are going to have error like this. Okay, let's see. Look, we used while loop to read all the text file. We opened it, we read each line, we went through all the line and read each single line using while loop. Okay, so what is the next one? We can use for loop. We can read the entire file using the for loop now. So this one is the same. We'll use with, and then I'm going to follow the indenting for line in text file read lines. Now we have S. Pay attention to S in read lines. Okay, so for this, what I'm missing here, that comma. So for loop, while loop, we always must have comma at the end of a statement that we write down. Okay, so now I'm going to again indent it and say print this line until, and then the end is going to be no space here. Okay, so because look, a space means this one, this means no space. Okay, so now let's see. Okay, we do this for each single line until we are done. and then again pay attention to indenting and print each line until there is no space. Here it is. We use for loop to read all the entire file, and still the format is not like what we had in CSV file. Okay, so now what else? I'm going to use another for loop here. What is the difference between the previous one? Oh, okay, I know what I'm doing here. Here I read the file. I'm going to copy paste everything and show you the difference. So I am reading each line in the text file that I defined here. But here what I did, I defined the text file, and then I said for each line in text file dot read lines. I didn't have to use dot read lines. I could just say for each line in the text file, like the way I did here, right? So actually I don't do this. Reserve word. Okay. In was a reserve word, and then or in text file without that. Okay, so we are not having the we didn't use text file dot read lines. Okay, please pay attention to all of this and notice the difference. Okay, so same file. I'm just showing you, you didn't have to write down dot read lines. Okay. Okay, so now we want to write the files. I'm going to make a markdown here. We read the file. Now we are going to write it. How we are going to write it? Using the write command. Okay, I'm going to create two paths here. One is for my original data, original text file, and this is the modified text file. So path 1 gets the original one, path 2 gets the second file. Next, text data .txt. This one is text.data.txt. Okay, so now I'm going to read the file with open path 1, and then argument is read only as text file, and then I'm going to create new data equal text file dot read lines parentheses, right? And then I am going to use with again, open path 2 W as, now I'm going to write down the new text data, don't forget the comma, and then the new text data, write these lines okay. So I open the path 1 as text file, then define a new variable, saved all the read lines, entire things in here, new data. Now again I'm opening path 2, right? What is the mode here? Writing mode. Mode has changed to W. Mode is read only, create a new file, store all the entire text file that we read, and then open the new path for the new file that we are saving. And then mode has changed. Remember this, indenting, remember this. Now, new text data, which I defined here, dot write lines. Now, write what we already saved in new data. Okay, in this way, you will have a new file copied in here in this whole path, and the name of the file will be new underscore text data. And then there is another way also. I will just copy path 1 and 2 here, and then open the first path. Then we are going to store what we are reading. Indenting should be proper. And open other path. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to use for loop for line in new data, create a new text data, and write every single line here. Okay, so we are done with reading the text file, opening the text file, opening a text file, reading the text file, and then using with to close that, and instead of closing that, and then using argument like r, a read line, and then we finally try to write the modified file. Actually, we didn't modify it that much, but we just learned how to write that file that we read into the same path but with different name, right? Okay, so now for the participation point for this lecture, I have questions. One of the question is about the arguments in open function. Okay, so now I want you to tell me how many arguments the mode, how many characters mode argument has, and also how many method you have for reading a kind of file that you opened with open function. So how many ways you can read file that you opened. Okay, so you have two participation points, participation question for this video, and Don't worry about for loop and while loop. We are going to talk about that more and more. For now, just learn what I showed you. You don't have to be worried about other way of using while or for loop to read the text file. We are just going to use this, whatever we learn, to be able to open and read our text or CSV file to be able to analyze the data set we have. Okay, this is lecture actually note 6. Remember, this is the note 6 and previous one was note 5, and we have two separate videos for reading files and writing files. Okay, take care of yourself and ask me your question. Bye.